I gotta be honest with you guys, the Pixel 6a was a truly special device. It just had so much personality in terms of its design. It had an amazing camera, super competitive pricing. There was just so many aspects back in 2022 that made this one of the best cheap phones that you could get your hands on. But now this phone has been out for almost 4 years now. The newest Pixel 10a has just released, and honestly, going back to test both of these phones side by side, I was genuinely surprised in some ways that I really wasn't expecting. Let's look at the design of both these phones, for example. The Pixel 6a, especially back in 2022, was just so incredibly charming in its own way. Each model had its own custom two-tone color scheme. This seafoam green in particular was just so unique and honestly still is to this day. Plus, there is so much attention to detail everywhere you look. The camera bar melts almost seamlessly into the frame of the phone. You have this ever so subtle notch where the volume and power buttons sit. The black matte frame had a rougher finish than the aluminum that we have today, and it made that two-tone color scheme feel way more intentional rather than an afterthought. In hindsight, the Pixel 6a was an absolutely gorgeous phone, and this design aged incredibly well. The thing is, we never really saw a design like this from Google ever again. As years went on, they slowly stripped away these tiny little details for something a bit more mainstream, which made this specific era of Pixel design more special than I think we first realized. By contrast, what we have today on the Pixel 10a is honestly a clear departure from that previous design language. Some would say the 10a is maybe too minimalist, and I can completely see where they're coming from. Instead of this two-toned, somewhat iconic look, we move to a boxy, modern, more reserved design, likely maximized to appeal to as many people as possible. That said, we still have some fun colors, which is nice. There's a full matte finish that feels great across the entire device. Both designs are good, but the 6a has this certain type of charm that really hasn't been replicated in an A-series device ever since. For the display, this is where we can get into much more objective territory, and this is where the Pixel 6a does start to show its age. Even back in 2022, the 60Hz panel was immediately out of date, and almost 4 years later in 2026, it's even more apparent, unfortunately. In my experience, the lower refresh rate makes the device feel much slower than it actually is. Everything from scrolling, tapping, opening apps, anything with a visual feedback of some kind creates a noticeable lag between what my fingers are doing and what my eyes can see on screen. And with the Material 3 Expressive update, I genuinely feel this issue has gotten worse. Material 3 Expressive was specifically designed around these springy, physics-based animations that make the UI feel more alive and responsive. Interacting with that on a 60Hz panel just makes everything feel choppy and stuttery by comparison. Now, if you're still using a Pixel 6a at this point, I'm sure it doesn't bother you. You're probably used to it by now, but I am telling you, the moment that you pick up a Pixel 10a or a 9a or anything with a 120Hz screen, you're going to feel the difference immediately. The Pixel 10a, by comparison, has a great display that gives you what I would consider a true flagship experience. It peaks at 3000 nits of brightness, which is the same as the base model Pixel 10 and more than the $1,200 S26 Ultra, by the way. We have a 120Hz max refresh rate, which is very noticeable when zipping through the operating system, playing games that support it, and as Material 3 Expressive gets implemented more and more across Android 17 and various Google apps, that smoothness is only going to be more apparent as time goes on. The display is also slightly larger than the 6a at 6.3 inches versus 6.1, while still largely maintaining the same footprint, and you are getting an upgrade to Gorilla Glass 7i versus Gorilla Glass 3 on the Pixel 6a, which should give you meaningfully better scratch and drop resistance in your day-to-day life. Performance is another area worth talking about, and in general, the Pixel 6a has actually proven to be a solid performer for everyday tasks over the years. Anything from social media, messaging, web browsing, basic games, it still handles all of that just fine, and honestly, the 10a is no different in that regard. The only point where the 6a really struggles still today in 2026 is with the thermals. I've used the Pixel 6 series quite a bit over the years, and I've popped my SIM card into the Pixel 6a just to briefly test out how things are going, and for me personally, all the same issues are still here. Doing anything on mobile data, whether that's maps, watching a YouTube video, downloading apps from the Play Store, caused this device to get hot way more often than I was comfortable with. It gets really bad, especially during the summer months, and if you're in an area that doesn't have perfect cell service, you are always going to experience some kind of overheating issue of some kind, again, at least in my experience. Thankfully, this is completely resolved with the Pixel 10a. Yes, it still does get warm during high-intensity gaming like most phones do, but for the core day-to-day experience, it's been absolutely perfect. Of course, the improved Exynos 5400 modem is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. I'd say cellular performance with the Pixel 10a is great, and I finally feel comfortable taking the A series out on a road trip without having to worry about huge battery drain, or I can use the Pixel 10a as a hotspot without having to worry about constant overheating. The Pixel 10a in general is just more capable of handling sustained usage over long periods of time in a way that the Pixel 6a just simply cannot. And if that's something you are sick and tired of, upgrading to the 10a will certainly be a good move. And even if performance isn't your biggest concern, the software alone is a compelling reason to at least think about upgrading. To be clear, the Pixel 6a is definitely holding its own when it comes to software, and I was actually pretty impressed as I was doing research on this video. Just in the past 6 months alone, the Pixel 6a received lock screen widgets, the updated Now Playing app, icon shapes and AI-generated icon packs, pixel theme packs, guided frame improvements. Just take a look at the full change list for Android 16 QPR 1, 2, and 3, and you're gonna see so many features were added, and I'm actually impressed again for an almost 4-year-old device. On the other hand, there is still a lot you're going to be missing out on, but it's mostly extra stuff that you might not even be interested in the first place anyways. Features like the ability to make music in the Pixel Recorder app, having access to Pixel Journal, AI notification summaries, camera features like Add Me or Camera Coach or the manual mode. You might be missing a couple random Gemini features inside some first-party Google apps here and there, but then there are some big ones like the Pixel desktop windowing experience and quick share compatibility with iOS devices. Obviously, only you can decide if those features are important enough for you to upgrade. For me, desktop windowing and AirDrop support is very practical needs, while everything else are just little touches that make the Pixel experience feel more personal if you're even into that in the first place. Next up is battery, and honestly, it's the biggest area where those 4 years of time have certainly caught up to the Pixel 6a. Logically, if you've had your Pixel 6a since launch, you are almost certainly experiencing some form of battery degradation at some level. Most phone batteries are at their healthiest in the first 2 years, and after that, you start seeing slower charging times and faster battery drain, and with a 4-year-old phone running the latest version of Android plus all these demanding apps out there, it does add up pretty quickly. Realistically, most people at this point are probably lucky to get 3 hours of on-screen time with minimal usage, probably less if you're consistently using mobile data. If you are lucky enough to have your battery freshly swapped out as of late, you might be closer to 4 hours, possibly 5 if you're extremely diligent with your battery management. While the Pixel 10a, on the other hand, is a completely different beast in that regard. It has the largest battery out of any Google phone right now, including the flagships at 5100 milliamp hours compared to 4400 on the Pixel 6a. In my own experience with my usual workload of social media, web browsing, YouTube, podcasts, streaming music and maps on the road, I am consistently getting more than a full day on a single charge, definitely getting more than 6 hours of on-screen time, and for lighter users, this can easily be a 2-day phone. On top of that, it charges up to 50% in 30 minutes with the correctly supported charger. It supports wireless charging up to 10 watts, something that the Pixel 6a doesn't even support at all, and as a whole, it's a massive improvement across every dimension of the battery experience. Now, there is one caveat that you've probably heard a million times by now, which is how the Pixel 10a does not support MagSafe. Yes, you can get a case, and yes, everything will be perfectly fine if you do, but personally, I would rather wait for the Pixel 11a to see if Google includes that natively. And if you held out for this long, another year probably won't kill you if MagSafe is equally as important to you as it is to me. Last but not least, let's talk about the camera, and this is genuinely the area that surprised me the most while making this video. And with this comparison, I didn't do anything fancy. I just took photos in standard zoom, on auto mode, with both cameras side by side, and it's honestly scary how similar the results are. Across every image that I took, the color accuracy, sharpness, exposure, and overall contrast are all very, very close to each other. In some images, the Pixel 6a is a bit warmer. In some images, the Pixel 10a handles blown out elements slightly better. Some images have the Pixel 6a handling shadows in more detail than the 10a, while the 10a might handle aggressive bokeh maybe slightly better. Regardless, on the 10a or the 6a, you're getting clear, gorgeous, colorful pixel-style images, and I honestly expected more of an obvious gap. The Pixel 10a is objectively better in some areas though. As you can tell, the primary lens has a slightly wider field of view. We get 8x digital zoom instead of 7x on the 6a with much higher quality zoomed images. Video is much better on the 10a as well, again with clearer, sharper, and better colors. Very noticeable if you compare them side by side. But as for the core experience, for those that just need simple, low effort, everyday photography, the Pixel 6a is still insanely good in 2026, and it's absolutely the most mind-blowing part of this comparison by far. So with all of that said, where does that leave us when we're talking about the Pixel 6a versus the 10a? Well, I will say, if you have been holding on to the Pixel 6a for all this time, it's going to be a very noticeable and very beneficial upgrade in every possible way. The display, the thermals, the battery life, the extra software support. There is just no version of the story where it's not a meaningful improvement. That said, if you can wait just one more year, I am extremely confident that the Pixel 11a is going to address some of these major issues. We'll probably see MagSafe. Hopefully, likely, it'll bring over the Tensor G5 and probably include some camera hardware upgrades, maybe some more RAM, maybe it starts at 256 gigabytes base storage. To be clear, nothing is official obviously, but I just cannot see another year where Google holds out on making meaningful upgrades for the A series. I think with the Pixel 10a, the community was very vocal about their needs, and I just cannot imagine Google not addressing some of that feedback. Either way, guys, that is more than enough out of me. I have talked for quite some time now, and I want to bring it over to you guys. Now that we have a clear comparison, how are you feeling about the Pixel 6a versus the 10a? Are you still considering an upgrade, if at all? Are you gonna hold out until next year, or maybe jump for a competitor? Maybe a similarly budgeted Samsung phone or the Nothing Phone 4a Pro? Please let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd from 9to5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.